Good evening, ladies and gents. Here with you recording on Tuesday, February 5th, 2019. Welcome to the show. Good evening to everybody. Hope you're having a good week so far. Today, I'll hop right to it. We have Collin Crypto making his second appearance on the podcast. The last time he was on was June 2018, which probably feels like a lifetime ago to a lot of us. So Collin, what's up? How you been, man? What's been new in your world since the last appearance about 7 months ago?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Things have been good. Obviously, trying to keep my head up in the bear market, so a little less exciting. But the way it goes is, things get done. There's a lot of developments that get done in the bear market, but obviously the hype and stuff is from the price speculation. So now that the price is kind of, there's less of that right now, and it's a little bit idle. Things are actually getting built, and you can watch, things like the Lightning Network and different products kind of come to fruition. So it's good to see.
Yeah, I was talking with my dad, I think it was like a couple months ago, and he was like vaguely invested in crypto for a while. He was a little bit late to the game. I think like a lot of people, he didn't like buy it the first instance of me being like, you should really buy some of this stuff. But like, it kind of took a while to get on board. But one of the things he was saying, he was like, in this bear market, like there's been no positive news at all. And I was like, there's been a lot of positive news. It's just that the market isn't such a, a trend right now that it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't affect the price at all.
That's bear markets for you, right?
Yeah, kind of how she goes, but I guess that's why they're difficult, right?
So but they'll jump back in when it's 16,000 and exciting, and
yeah,
they go to it's already gone up, telling them to buy, and they go to dinner and hear people talking about buying next to them. Yeah, then they'll get excited again.
Like, it needs to go up 5x first for any kind of interest, and then it's.
That reminds me, I was looking
at the same thing in 2015 when it was just grinding around, 250 or whatever, and it just was annoying and boring. And we had good news, but no one cared, and there just wasn't a lot of volume. And that was obviously the good time to buy. But that's how markets work: is or a little bit of irrational exuberance and very long, boring bear trends.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think 2019 is going to be like 2015 in terms of just flat and like mind-meltingly boring?
Well, we've kind of seen that. We had that all year in 2018. Unfortunately, the big thing everyone was relying on was that 6,000 level supporting. And when that gave kind of like ruined the whole year from a technical analysis perspective. So I personally think sideways is good just because then you can kind of see clear accumulation. That your downside risk of when to cut at new lows and stuff like that. So I guess it depends on the angle you're looking from purely, price, what the price is doing. I think sideways is good.
Yeah.
Less exciting to talk about hearing it every day, and you hear people going, okay, this happens, and price moves $4 and no one cares, and you have to wait months on end. So it really depends on the time frame that you're looking at it.
It's funny because playing this hero moon wreck, living life on the 5-minute charts now, I get hyped up over a 2-minute or $2 move now, because I'm playing all these 5-minute candles, and I'm looking at myself and I'm like, yeah, I got to look in the mirror here because this is just, I'm going down a rabbit hole. I don't know if I want to be there, but I'm there right now. So
Collin, have you played that yet? Moonwrecked?
Very briefly. I got in the beta, but I definitely haven't given it the actual college try, as they say, and given it the chance it deserves. But I've heard nothing but good things so far.
Yeah, Prince is like Mr. Conservative, like Mr. like good discipline with trading, right? And like I think we started off with the beta with like 2,000 hero tokens, and Prince, you were betting like, was it like 5 tokens per game?
I was betting like 10 per game for the longest time. And I'm looking back now and I'm just kicking myself because sure, okay, nice and conservative. I'm not going to have any huge downswings, but at the time, the ratios, the multipliers were so juicy that I really missed out on some golden opportunities because I was so conservative. So now I got Dale in my ear because Dale goes hard, right? He walks in and he's flexing everywhere. He's like, I think he's 3rd on the leaderboard right now. And he's busy, he's like, hey man, just bet more. Just bet more. And it's like, yo, Dale, like I don't have the balance you have right now, man. Like, so I got to deal with Dale all the time, which is, he's in my ear, but I guess
I've only watched friends play it. I haven't actually tried it myself, but it caters to the right audience, the degenerate gambler, for lack of a better phrase. And if you think in crypto, we saw that blow up with OKCoin when they introduced 20x futures, and even more so in the last few years with BitMEX and their 100x and whatnot. So, I mean, that there's obviously people that want to trade those kind of products and the high risk, short-term stuff. So it's a good market.
If they can get an, I'm wondering if they end up getting like an API integration or something. Because fuck that, it would get pretty, it would get interesting, right? Now you got people who can just get at it all the time, and I think the possibilities with it are cool, and I love it. But we're not here to yap about that for the whole time.
Yeah, it definitely ties in with what we're talking about though, where especially the past, like, let's say 5 or 6 months, the markets have just been so flat. I mean, we had that period where it seemed like we were at 6,500, 6,000 forever. I think that was like a 3 month, maybe 4 month period. And then we of course, had that dip down to 3,500 ish, maybe low 3,000s at some points. Which I was kind of like, after that flat period at 6,500, I was thinking like, okay, let's like get this capitulation and be done with it. And I'm still not positive this dip to lower threes was that. But you can kind of make an argument for it if you stare at the chart long enough, which is maybe a bad thing. But what are your thoughts on on capitulation? Like, in your opinion, Collin, have we experienced it yet? Is it still in the future?
I mean, that 6,000 level, like you mentioned, was the critical thing. We held that all year. We tested it. I think it was February of 2018, and then we kind of hung around since our last time I was on this podcast. So I think it was around early June. But yeah, it broke last November, and once that kind of went under that 5,900 level, then it kind of told pretty much everyone from a technical perspective, okay, the risk reward just went, down the crapshoot. So it's time to get out. That's why we saw that large candle following it immediately. And we dumped in, the 3,150 level was kind of where we had that previous resistance around the prior year, 2017. We tested it once, let me see here on a chart, in September 2017. And yeah, so that held so far. Obviously, we're pretty close to that right now. So we're kind of grinding around that 200 EMA level. So it's a little early to say. I'd like to hold here for, even another few months. Obviously, people don't want to hear that on average on Twitter or whatnot, but I think it would be healthy for kind of an accumulation range in the same thought process as that 6,000 level, where if that support level does hold, that'll be very close to the bottom, and the risk reward for entering trades goes really high from a bullish perspective. I think if that 200 EMA goes, the levels below that, there's a large gap, and then we're kind of looking at the same thing where, it's going to be a big move in one day kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. It's just flat is not like a bad thing at this point. Yeah, I know it's boring, and I know everyone kind of hates it because you bring up the chart every day, whether you're at work, you're at home, and you're just kind of staring at it, like being like, "Come on, do something." But we do need this period, I think, of just like of just bleeding out like every last or as many people as we can who are just like fringely interested.
Look at precious metals, right? Like this is it's just one of those things. Markets go through these, unless it's equity markets, then you have the Fed just pumping them up. But it's just, it's cycles. You need to. It sucks. The nice thing about Bitcoin is the cycles in the past, at least, have been, not as long as, say, a silver, the bear market or something like that, right? So that's been nice. But yeah, it's just cycles, right? Like it's you can't really avoid it, right?
You'll hear a lot of fundamentalists say, "Oh, the technology hasn't changed everything." But yeah, from a price perspective, if you're focusing on just that, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's boring, but boring is good in a sense.
Yeah.
One of the things I come into wondering is like, so obviously in this sort of environment, I think everyone's kind of looking for like, okay, what can I look for that will clue me into what happens next? And for me, of course, I think the easy thing is going back to the previous bubbles, like 2014, 15, and seeing how much we mimic that. And I've kind of had this idea that the Bitcoin chart is going to be even like more consistently cyclical than a lot of things, just because a lot of it is psychologically driven right now. It's not like we have things like PE ratios or value investors stepping in. I mean, at a certain point, risk reward is going to appeal to those people, but there's not really a measurement,
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Collin, in terms of, do you think the crypto markets are very cyclical, or could you very well see that we do something completely unexpected, whether that be like straight up from here or just straight down for a long time?
I think they're cyclical. We've kind of seen that same pattern happen repeatedly. Big irrational exuberance, a big pump, then people hear about it, mainstream media picks it up, and then there's a big crash, and it's brutal, and everyone's underwater, and no one in hindsight took profit at the right times. The real question to ask is, how long is it going to take before we see a large support level built and a large bounce beyond that? And that's, the $1 million question. But it's basically supply and demand at the end of the day. And, you know, we have the halving coming up in 2020 and another in 2024. So, I mean, that's definitely on the supply side from a benefit perspective if you're a long-term bullish hodler, I guess. But if you're reading Twitter, it's like, okay, what's going to happen in the next 3 days? And that's a different story entirely, you know? So kind of depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
I don't see a chance in hell that it's not higher than 33.76 in, you know, 2024 when that halving stops, just because the inflation rate will be so low, and unless it'll be zero or a lot higher than now, kind of like Satoshi said when he first made it, it's in 20 years it's going to be worth a lot per coin or none at all. So I mean, there could certainly be flaws in this protocol. We've seen that kind of this week with the ZEC news and everything for Zcash. So sure, there could be something that comes out and breaks it. We've seen large ones for Ethereum, large exploits happen. Bitcoin had inflation bugs of its own when it was, you know, early on. So there is always a potential. It is new code. It's quote unquote untested, even though it's, you know, 10 years old. But on the long run, compared to, you know, the US dollar or anything, it's, you know, an infant.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to think about, you know, and I mean, my gut feeling is like more flatness, and I've kind of had it for a while, and I don't really, I mean, part of me wants that to be true, partly not, but another thing I kind of wanted to touch on is I think the whole like institutional money is coming thing, I think that's been a lot slower to play out than a lot of people thought it would be like a year ago. I think the custodial services are not quite there yet. I think, you know, the trading interfaces are not quite up to par where you have, you know, gigantic money flowing into the space. Have you heard anything in your dealings, in your network, in terms of institutional money, whether that's actually a thing that's happening, or is it a pipe dream at this point?
There's piles and piles of hedge funds and institutional money in it. It's always kind of been the hidden news in the background, even since I got in the industry, you know, almost over 6 years ago. It's just like, oh, we'll just wait for Wall Street to come in. I mean, the smart players are in. It's just people are kind of waiting for, I guess, the snowball effect, something like an ETF. I don't think the ETF right now has, you know, a very high chance, maybe 5% of being approved. And it's just kind of a pipe dream in the background. There's a lot of money in the industry, but when you compare it to, you know, legacy markets, you know, $100 billion is nothing for the entire market cap. Jeff Bezos is worth, you know, much more than that. Until his divorce, anyway. I don't know what his current valuation is. We'll see.
Yeah, he's still doing pretty well. So he can take a 50% haircut and still be laughing.
Yeah, Mackenzie's gonna make out like a bandit, though. I mean, she's been there for quite some time, so perhaps she deserves it. But,
that was a good long-term hold for her.
Yeah, yes. No kidding.
A very successful trade on her part. She's a better trader than all of us.
Oh, hell yeah.
But Collin, I wanted to, so given that you have a perspective that Prince and I do not have, in that you've been in this space for a few years longer than we have, at least. I'm curious how 2018 and the early part of 2019, how does that feel to you in relation to something like 2015?
Yeah, I get asked that fairly often. It's definitely very similar in the sense that it lasts longer than anyone expects. But at the end of the day, like we were talking about the cyclical nature of things, it is pretty much the same. It's just the only difference now is there's so much more money involved from that scale. So from, you know, I hate to use the word fundamental view, it's still pretty similar.
Yeah.
Cool.
On the topic of money, Quadriga disappearing. $190 million Canadian. How about that? This is insane to me.
Disappeared. We don't know yet.
Yeah, this is insane to me because that was the first exchange I really ever used. Like being up here in Canada, they are pretty, you know, for a long time they were the exchange to use. I was fortunate that, you know, I didn't have any money on there and any of, you know, so I'm not in a bad situation there, but it's just crazy to me to see all of this happening and then kind of reading, you know, and doing some more digging and seeing, you know, what people got to say and those who are affected and some of their research. And honestly, this just seems like a really, really elaborate scam. Like I'm not buying it after some of the stuff I've been seeing. It's like, okay, this was played. This is you know, there was a plan to this and everything. It's kind of insane. Like, it's just insane.
being in crypto for quite a few years, you kind of just become numb to a lot of these things, and you naturally assume the worst. It's not a good thing to have. It just it happens. You become permanently cynical about all these things. So I mean, we saw it with Crypto, which a lot of people are comparing it to, in where Big Vern, the CEO, he was running a massive exchange that was they traded altcoins back in the day, and he fled to China and stole 8,000 Bitcoin from its users. And then he was even nastier. I think he left his wife in the dust. She had no clue. I guess I don't remember all the details.
I bet that's exactly what's going on here. Because you're reading these things, and the wife is saying she has no idea what's going on. It's just kind of a huge shock to her. And honestly, I do believe her. I believe she doesn't really have a clue. She's not a part of it. You're looking at this, and the guy made his will. He made a will. I don't know. It was not long
12 days ago or whatever it was.
Yeah,
right?
It was very quick. He made the will, and then he was off to India, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of weird tidbits there. So just to catch everyone up, in case they aren't familiar, we'll kind of give the highlights here. The CEO, all this is allegedly too. I'll just preface that. He had Crohn's disease, and then he went to India to support orphanages or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly.
Yeah,
and then he changed his will right before he went to India. Died in India from Crohn's, and then his wife couldn't access any of the funds, and the exchange couldn't access any of the funds because even though they said they had multi-signature wallets, it apparently was all under his encrypted laptop, and he was the only one with the keys. So everyone, reiterates the thing: not your keys, not your Bitcoin. And it's kind of, he has quote unquote $190 million locked up that no one can access or find. And, the exchange obviously owes customers their withdrawals and whatnot. So that's one portion of the court side. And it's just kind of, we're just starting to see the slow court moving. Kind of today, I think, was the first thing, and they didn't get a whole lot done. They kind of just, filed to pause everything for their assets and whatnot. But yeah, I think as more time goes by, we're going to hear even more about this, because also allegedly the co-founder, I believe he had changed his name, and he was tied to indicted for fraud in early 2000s, and it was money laundering, selling credit card information, user identity stuff. Exactly who you don't want to be providing exchange information.
So that's got me a little
CIC, credit card, all the important stuff on you from someone that had that shady past but changed his name. There are old Reddit threads where people accused them, but I guess they kind of just threw those. Yeah,
Quadriga was very good at censoring their threads, and I remember this back because a lot of people, there was a whole thing for a long time about where the hell is my withdrawal, right? It's now months past due. Where the hell is it, right? And I went through a similar thing, and then it was the last time I ever used them again. And I just remember paying attention to their Reddit sub. And anytime anyone would post something that actually had some pretty valid concerns, valid info, it wasn't bullshit. It was booted right off the page pretty quickly. So, they've been really shady kind of from the start. And even, I remember one time, I emailed support. I'm like, okay, what the hell is going on here? You told me this, now it's this. What is the deal? And then it's, okay, well, we're going to give you some money to, keep you happy, say thank you for your service and sorry and all this, right? Of course, money never is there, right? It's so my experience was, okay, I'm going to CoinSquare, which is now who I use, and thank God I made the change when I did. But it's insane just to me, this whole thing, because they went downhill. Everything for the exchange went downhill pretty quickly once the bull market got insane. Withdrawals were forever just never on time. It was a consistent shit show. And, there was a lot of things about, well, it's banking issues, and the banking climate out here for crypto, it is pretty shitty. So, to me, I was like, okay, well, I'll buy that. But now seeing this, and, you're hearing two reports that even during December, when technically this guy was already dead, and technically he's the only one who's got access to move funds around from the cold wallets, well, there were still funds being moved around in December. And so, it's like, okay, well, if he was actually dead, why is that, what's going on there? And then now there's a good post on Reddit. Somebody's done some sleuthing and found the Litecoin cold wallet address. And it looks like there's been a lot of action going on from that wallet, even in the past few days. So it's like, okay, there's a lot of bullshit going on here. And it's just, to me, it's insane, because, to me, it's gotten to a point, and like you said, you're in crypto long enough, you kind of get this really negative feel about a lot of things when it's like this. But it just, you know, to me, it's like, yeah, there's no way this dude's actually dead.
And to be devil's advocate, people all the time on Reddit, since they don't have to verify any of their facts, they'll post, "Oh, this is the cold storage for Mt. Gox. This is the cold storage for Binance," and they're often wrong. You know, it's just a large address. So, I mean, you have to look at it from that perspective and see, okay, is this just a big Litecoin address that's moving, or is this verified that it's their cold storage, or is this portion of the not cold storage that they actually do have access to, because they have access to some of the funds, just not all of them. I think I read somewhere 70 million in cash and fiat in fiat and crypto was accessible or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah. So I don't know.
Jeez.
Regardless, it's going to be a long, drawn-out process. It's not going to be good at the end of the day. I don't think there's a great outcome regardless.
No.
And it's going to bring in a lot of new regulation that's going to probably be very strict in Canada. So that's unfortunate from that perspective. It's going to slow everything down. Just like when Mt. Gox exploded, Japan, you know, they changed a lot of the stuff they were doing too. So I think from the regulation perspective, it's going to get, you know, bad.
Things are going to come down pretty hard, especially after this. You know, you can't just have $190 million disappear and not expect any kind of serious repercussions. Like it's going to be pretty intense. I think, you know, it'll be interesting to see how that affects the client, you know, the crypto kind of scene in Canada, you know. So yeah, it's insane.
I think, another little wrinkle is that his name on the alleged death certificate was spelled incorrectly. His last name, at least, it was kind of like a small error, like an A instead of an E, I think. But it's still a little bit like, it makes you think.
So if you gave all this information to someone who has no skin in the game, has no idea what crypto is, and let them to decide, you know, it sounds like, in my opinion, it would veer heavily towards the it's bullshit kind of side of things. So, you know, it's hard to say.
Yeah. And like, I don't want to be insensitive either. I know Crohn's is a very serious disease, but I do not think it's lethal in a lot of cases. And I think, I mean, you look at the guy, I don't know, but he looked like a somewhat healthy, otherwise like 30, 40-year-old, you know, so it wouldn't seem like the kind of person that would just kind of drop dead with proper medical care.
And I guess in his will, he left what, like $100,000 to his dogs. Like,
kudos for that. I'm pro that. It's my favorite part of the story.
Oh, like so much of it just doesn't make sense. And I guess, I don't know, the RCMP is investigating them now. So they're going to, but you know, how much will they really find a lot? Who knows? Like, there's some looking at their kind of the cyber crime crew who's trying to get into his laptops, all this stuff. And some people were doing some background on these guys. And I guess the background ain't all that appealing. And it's like, oh, this is who you're going with, really. It's like, you know, you got a year experience kind of thing. So
if you read the Reddit, there's a lot of just crazy conspiracy theories too. You know, the co-founder, he ordered the hits and he's mafia related and all this. And at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to find out a whole lot of information. But the courts will slowly move through it. And I think more fun stuff will pop up, more conspiracy theories will come out. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be good for China and the crypto scene, I don't think.
In a situation like this,
Canada.
Yeah, in a situation like this now, an entire exchange goes bust, hundreds of millions lost. What, you know, you've kind of seen these things happen, just witnessing them. What usually happens now to the people who are affected? Like, do they actually ever get their money back? Like,
well, we've seen a few examples. I mean, most of the times for smaller exchanges, poof, it's gone. Very little repercussion. A lot of this was also, the industry was a lot less mature than it is now. The big examples are Bitfinex, and they tokenized their own kind of token on their website and paid back from fees, and 100% of their fees, I believe it was, would just buy back that token, kind of their own security. And then they actually repaid all the money they lost over a long period of time. And obviously the company is still crushing it now. Bitfinex is still around, and everyone that actually lost money, if they held through that, you know, nasty point where those reserves were lost for a long period of time, they actually got fully reimbursed. There's also kind of a futures market involved there where you could sell your $1 worth of tokens for, you know, I think it dropped to 10 cents at one point. So Bitfinex was buying back their own losses at a huge discount at one point, but that was kind of its own, traders like that just because that was its own gimmick kind of thing. But what are the other examples? Crypto, I don't think there was much left over. Big Vern ran with 8,000 BTC, I think it was, and he just left kind of just some random altcoins on his exchange. So they went through all the court process, and they had a hard time figuring out who it was because they didn't have good KYC AML procedures back then for knowing which user was associated with what and what their balance were, because all the logs were destroyed. So it was just a long, drawn out process, and people got, you know, a very small portion back of what they originally had on the exchange. So I'm trying to think of what other examples off the top of my head are recent.
Did anyone ever, like, did Big Vern, anything ever caught him, or he just gone into the wind?
As far as I know, the people assumed he fled to China, and no one's ever heard of him again. Okay. But I haven't heard anything in the last year, so I don't know.
Jeez.
I love the name.
I hate to say he got away with it, but I don't know. Looks like it so far.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's like a mob boss or like a rapper or something, you know? And he's just like making off with tons of money. Like Big Vern. I mean, I don't know anything about the guy, but if you have a nickname like that, I feel like you've like done some stuff.
Yeah, his name was Paul Vernon, I believe, and that was just his Twitter name was Big Vern, so everyone calls him that. But yeah, it was basically after he fled, I think the courts basically, you know, made an indictment. They said you have to repay everything, but if you never show up again, I guess, I don't know, no one's seen him since.
Okay, interesting.
So Collin, one thing I know you're pressed for time here. We gotta, you know, get the good stuff out. But one thing I wanted to touch on with you especially is having run the Gambit trading group, and you know, all these kind of indicators that are included in that, and everything you've used in your own experience. When you look at a chart nowadays, what are some of the indicators you have up, whether it be Ichimoku, moving averages, exponential moving averages, what have you? What does your chart look like at this point?
Yeah, I like to keep it as simple as possible. I like kind of all my options where I can look at a chart and 30 seconds later I can kind of see exactly what happened recently on that time frame. Simple is always better, but I do like to have a lot of information on my charts. So for public indicators, like you mentioned, I use Ichimoku Cloud. I don't use the default settings since that was designed for the Japanese Forex market, which is open 28 days a month. The default settings are obviously, you know, designed for that, and I think it was created in the 80s. I changed them a little bit for the cryptocurrency markets just because they're open 24/7, 365. So, you know, when something's looking at the past few days or whatever, those numbers can change if the market's never closed. Beyond the Ichimoku Cloud, for public indicators, I use EMAs, just moving averages, Bollinger Bands, and then pivots, and all of those you can kind of just throw in any chart and kind of just see a general idea of support and resistance levels. For private indicators, I kind of have been working on my own for a while, taking bits and pieces of different ones for years now, and kind of just overall something to simplify and show just exactly what price is doing at a certain time. So I use what's called the Gambit trading suite. You can just Google that, and it's got a trading view post, and you can just leave a comment there and try it out for free and see if you like it. But the idea is it'll show you safer spots to sell, safer spots to buy, and kind of you can just stack all these indicators on top of each other and to give you a better idea of a support and resistance level. So you can see you know, just safer entries, and you can kind of confirm your bias if you go, okay, 3150 is that support level, the EMA is there, you know, that was the previous resistance from a year ago, and then you stack this and see that Ichimoku lines up, you see that moving averages are still bullish, you see that, you know, there's a confirmed reversal to the upside, and the stochastics look good, and oscillators and whatnot. So you kind of just stack all this information, and the more indicators you stack, obviously, in theory, the better the probability that a lot of buyers are going to show up at that location, and the same for sellers and resistance areas. So that's pretty much all of them. And then obviously weekly support and resistance levels come with the suite as well. And then I've always been a fan of the Stoke Rsi, and that's I kind of made a grid for it so I can see multiple time frames at the same time. So if you use the default one on TradingView, it kind of just shows whatever time frame you're on. I had it developed where I can kind of see it for 5 different time frames, and kind of just like I mentioned at the start of this, it's just you can see all this information right off the bat, 30 seconds into a chart, and kind of go, okay, this is where we're at. This is, you know, where I would set bids. This is where I'd set sells, and kind of just go from there.
Yeah, I see. We talked to like a lot of different traders, and that's a common theme with everybody. It's like you know, I think you reach a certain point when you first start out where you don't really know any indicators, so you have very little on your chart, and then you kind of get into this mindset where it's like, oh, the more the better. You know, I just want to have as much crap on my screen, and then I think that kind of, you know, gives way to like, okay, I got to simplify this a little bit.
Right. There's a million different ways to trade. You have to find obviously what works for you, what's consistent, and what's profitable. At the end of the day, indicators are like assholes. Everyone has one, right? So you got to find, you know, just from experience, from trial and error, whether it be if you want to do paper trading or real trading, just kind of learning, trial and error, getting better at it, feeling different markets out, different time frames out. Do you like to trade, the 15-minute charts and things are sporadic and you can trade every day? Do you like to trade the longer term trends? It's just a lot of data analytics, I guess, that go into it. My style of trading is definitely not, the only way to do it. Everyone can kind of say that. You just have to find, what works.
How active are you? Like, if you had to judge, like, in a month, how many trades might you do?
It's changed. So 2015, I was doing a lot of Forex, and so that was every day. Right. 2017, I kind of slowed it down to the daily time frame. So it could be a little bit longer on Bitcoin and Ethereum and whatnot. And then 2018, I kind of moved to the weekly. So far less trades on a monthly thing, but you can kind of work on any time frame you want, except for the 1 minute.
Weekly is a lot cleaner. Yeah.
Right. And again, it's just consistent too. So it's personal preference. There's no proper way to do it. It's just how much time you want to devote, how large your trades are, your risk, your downside risk, and all that. So
it's all about like jiving with your style, and what fits your emotions too. Like some people do succeed trading 5-minute or 3-minute candles, and that's not really what I can do well, at this point. But
right, I know a lot of my Forex friends do 15 minutes, and even that's too low for me. Where it's like, okay, there's too many false positives in news drops, and then technical analysis shoots out the window, and all your stops are ran because they released some important thing or whatever.
Some data
from a purely technical perspective, that's the way I like to trade. It kind of removes all the emotion, so I don't really care what Bitcoin does. I don't care what Ethereum does. I just look at a chart and say whatever that is, I can trade that. That's my personal preference. I know also people that it was 2012 and they're like, oh, Bitcoin is going to be the future. It's going to change, bypass the the Fed, and it's going to change the world, and they just buy and hold, and that works too, obviously, for them. But you just got to find your preference and what you like to do. I don't like a lot of emotion in my trades, so I just keep it purely from the charts. I can trade anything. Even like back in 2015, 2016, we were trading known scam coins just because those go up and down too. So I mean, you can buy a scam coin and it would go up, and then you'd sell it, and you can make profit from purely no emotion, just from the technical trade of it. So
yeah, I think that's something that people like often lose sight of, is like, especially where everything's, especially like politics and just everything nowadays is like tribal, and crypto is very much like that too, where it's like you have your coins that you really like, and a lot of people become maximalists over certain coins, and they just kind of discount everything else. And
it's
so
kind of funny because now we're seeing, there's been the wave, right? We've seen a lot of people be shitcoin maximalists, and different coin that they seem to love and whatever it may be. And now, as we've gone through the bear market, those same people are becoming Bitcoin maximalists. And so it'll be interesting to see, because I have a feeling when alts start to pick back up again and the crazy returns can come, if that ever happens again, who knows. But I have a feeling we'll be seeing those exact same people becoming altcoin maximalists once again.
Yeah, Colin, I'm curious, where do you stand on that? I feel like I can maybe guess the answer given how long you've been in the space, but I'm curious to hear what you say in terms of Bitcoin maximalism or the worthiness of some of these alts, in your opinion.
I'm just in it because they're highly volatile and I can trade them.
There we go.
Long-term feelings for really anything, even Bitcoin. I don't care if that gets dethroned by whatever. As long as there's people buying and selling and things are moving, I'm down to trade it.
I think that's my favorite answer that I've heard.
I don't think that will die either. I mean, because I think as long as there's money to be made and volatility to be had, it'll attract traders and capital.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't understand, and it's a little bit harder if you're just getting into trading, is there's just as much money to be made when things are going down. When people see Bitcoin, it's, I have to buy it and hold it for 3 years. That's not always the case, and that works for any market really. But when people get into Bitcoin, it's kind of an all or nothing mentality, just because probably it's a newer industry and less mature. But that's just something you experience and see a lot.
It's one of those things too. Like, volatility brings attention, right? I remember we were at some conference in Philly, and someone asked me, like, how do you get people into this when it's so volatile? People don't want to have to deal with this kind of volatility. A lot of people don't even know what to do because of this volatility. And it's like, well, how are you going to get attention, right? The volatility is what really attracts a lot of attention to it. It's what brings, the news, okay, what the hell is Bitcoin doing? Why is it up like this? So it's one of those, because there is a lot of people who don't really care for that, the price action, and we could say those people are truly in it because they find the technology fascinating. But volatility is one of those things that
it also doesn't help to kind of follow up on that. It doesn't help that the mainstream media, they make their money from clickbait and from people viewing their articles. So they're incentivized to promote the same people making very large opinions. Like, I'm not going to bring out any names, but a lot of people were going, once we were at that 15,000 level, that, Bitcoin can go to $1 million a coin. And Bloomberg was posting all those, CNBC was posting them all. And then at every bottom of these kind of trends, you see the same thing going, we're at $3,000. Yeah, we're going to 100 kind of thing. And it's just, those get a lot of hits. A lot of, people spread that news, and those companies make a lot of money off ads and whatnot. So it kind of just further pushes their agenda, for lack of a better phrase, I guess.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, we know a lot of those stories are kind of BS because we've been trading or investing in some form for some time, speaking for like the three of us and probably most of the people listening to the show. But there are a lot of people, average Joes who see those articles on Bloomberg or CNBC or something. They go, oh, well, CNBC says it's going to 100. It's going to 100, guys. I just don't feel good about this.
Yeah, and Bloomberg, use that example, they've actually been kind of caught. I forget who I think it was Wall Street Journal or someone made an article that said the Bloomberg employees actually get larger paychecks if their articles go viral. So they're even on a individual writer kind of perspective incentivized to promote something that's going to go viral, even if they know it's wrong or know it's crazy. If it gets a lot of hits and it goes viral and spreads and Bloomberg makes a bunch of money, then they'll reward that person with a larger paycheck.
Jeez.
Yeah, follow the incentives. I mean, how someone makes their money is almost always, is a good indication of explaining their behavior to some degree.
Again, kind of circling back to why I personally like the technical analysis side of things, just because I can remove, all that news. I can remove the emotion and just go, yeah, this is what it looks like. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right, I'm right, kind of thing. And, I know my risk, my downside, and, just the potential. So when CNBC says some big news events, like, I don't care, it doesn't change, where the support and resistance levels are from my perspective. Obviously, we see a lot of, great news come out for Bitcoin all the time, and the price dumps that same day. It's not correlated, it never will be.
Yeah, people like to act like it is, though. It's like it's oftentimes the price moves, and then you look for a reason why. You're like, well, certainly there has to be
human psychology of why did the price go up 10% today? Well, there's more buyers than sellers. That's what it came down to. But people need an underlying reason.
People love a narrative.
Well, stories are how we learn things too. Like, even go back, just going back to like caveman days, it's like it was a way we spread information, and information spread from one tribe to another. And I think, we're way more advanced civilization wise now, but there are certain elements of our past, that are just hard to argue or hard to fight.
Yeah, we're human beings, right? The issue now is information can be manipulated so much. So it's just that classic. Careful what you trust. Be careful, if you see them. I think, for me, another classic is seeing, like the CNBC talking about even just the equity markets. And I remember there was a point, and it's so funny because it's almost like you can just put the point on the chart and then just see how the price reverses after, say, an article or comments come out. And there was a point back in December when the market, it was going through one of its sharpest declines in such a short time span ever. And, all it was doom and gloom, doom and gloom. And then, especially as it got down right around its bounce point, it was just the market's done. It's done. It's, everybody is, get short, get out, run to cash. And then boom, now, you got stocks up over 50% within, a month. It's kind of funny to see how some of those things play out, to the point almost.
Yeah, certainly the narratives are powerful, despite how true or not true they may be. I think as a general rule, like, I like to tell people, like, discount pretty much everything you read in mainstream media about investing, but especially about crypto, because like you said, the incentive system is so perverse. Their job is not to make you a smarter investor. Like you said, Collin, it's to get clicks on the article. And I know it seems like a severe measure, like just kind of don't pay attention to any of that. But I think in large part, it's kind of true. I mean, you have to be able to separate like signal from noise, I think. All righty. So we're going to wrap this up. Collin, thank you very much again. We appreciate your time. It's been fun talking to you. Before we let you go, where can everybody find you? Where can they find all the Gambit stuff again?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Collin Crypto. I have 2 L's in my name, so it's COLLIN Crypto. On Telegram, Twitter, it's kind of all the same nickname. So just Google, I guess, if you really need Collin Crypto, and it'll come up with all my information. So you can kind of just reach me out, whatever is easier for you.
Cool. Well, thank you again, man. Really appreciate the time and the insight. It's always good having you on. I really appreciate the perspective. That's, you know, something that Prince and I just don't have, you know, based on how long we've been in the market. So super appreciative and hope to have you on in the future.
Yeah, for sure. It was a good time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All righty. Peace out, everybody. Enjoy your nights. Have a good week. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.